Alrighty, folks. So I went and I saw the new James Bond movie. I am a Daniel Craig Bond fan. We'll get to my review in just 1 second. This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. So let me begin with what Daniel Craig's Bond is. So he's a much more soulful Bond than prior Bonds, right? Some of them are sort of parodic like Roger Moore. Some of them are sort of halfway in between like Pierce Brosnan. Daniel Craig's Bond is a very sincere Bond, meaning that he is sort of a hard-nosed, battle-scarred ex-soldier who is very stylish and is doing cool things. And I will admit, he's my favorite Bond. I really like Daniel Craig as Bond. I think Casino Royale is a truly terrific movie. I think it's the best Bond movie, period. I don't think any of the others have really met it. I think Skyfall was the second best. And this one is probably the third best, maybe? So I have some serious problems with this film. The opening sequence of the film is just terrific. That's true of all of the Daniel Craig Bond films, right? All of them open with just this great sequence. This one opens with this terrific sequence where he has to basically run through a small Italian city, and he's taking motorcycles upstairs, and he's flying over things in the classic Aston Martin. It's really cool. Right? It's about 15 minutes into the film. After the credits, things start to go off the rails pretty quickly because the big problem with this movie is that the plot makes no sense at all. I am your character. Let's start with Bond's actual character trajectory. This Bond, because he was essentially monogamous from Casino Royale, right? He's in love with this one woman, and then he's with her for a couple of movies, and then he moves on to Léa Seydoux, and he's monogamous with her, right? He's a serial monogamist. Because of that, there was only one way for his trajectory to go, and that was eventually he was going to get married and settle down, right? So the entire plot relies on him kind of becoming the responsible guy who's going to settle down. Well, the minute that happens, either he has to retire and he has to go off to pasture, or you have to kill him. So this is the last Bond movie. So one of those two things was going to happen. In order for Bond to work as a character, he can't become a responsible dad, right? If he becomes a responsible dad, then his character is done, right? Now he's become like Jack Ryan or like any other Tom Clancy hero. The whole point of Bond is that he's suave and he's debonair and all of this sort of stuff. And given the fact that it would have no emotional stakes if he just sort of retired and went off and lived with Léa Seydoux and his kid, they were going to kill him. And it was pretty obvious, I would say, from the middle of the movie on, that was the trajectory of the film, was that he was eventually going to die. So if you're going to kill Bond, you have to kill Bond in a pretty dramatic fashion, right? And he has to face up against a great villain. A historically, kind of speaking in terms of literature, take Sherlock Holmes, right? Take most iconic literary heroes. Sherlock Holmes in the original iteration by Arthur Conan Doyle, he actually dies, right? He was sick of writing Sherlock Holmes. And so what he did is he had him fighting Moriarty, who is his arch enemy, and then they both go tumbling off a waterfall together. Now, he ended up bringing Sherlock Holmes back a couple of years later because the outcry was so great that he'd killed Holmes. But if you're going to take out your hero has to simultaneously take out the big bad guy, right? The big villain. Okay, well, here is the problem. The villain in this movie just sucks. The villain in this movie is garbage. And nothing makes sense because the villain sucks. You can cut out the entire middle sequence of the film. Right? You can literally have the first 5 minutes of the film before the action sequence and the last 5 minutes of the film and miss the entire middle of the film. And plot-wise, you've missed very little. That is because the villains in these pieces matter. I don't know how they blew it that badly. The entire movie starts with this flashback sequence from Léa Seydoux's character. She's growing up. She's got an alcoholic mom. Her dad is an assassin on behalf of Spectre, presumably. And this guy comes tromping across the snow to a small house in the middle of nowhere and proceeds to kill the mom because her dad has killed this guy's entire family. Okay, then she tries to run away from this assassin, ends up under the ice, and the assassin, instead of killing her, saves her. And then we get the entire sequence with Bond where they're running away from Spectre and they're running away from the bad guys, and Bond puts her on a train because he no longer trusts her. He thinks that she is working for Spectre because of the last movie. Okay, fast forward 5 years. Now, for some odd reason, again, nothing makes sense here. For some odd reason, MI6 trusts her implicitly. Like, trusts her so much that they're allowing her to be the only person who talks with Blofeld. Why is this the case? And if this is the case, why hasn't this at any point been explained to James Bond? Right? Like, they were lovers, they were sleeping together. As it turns out, he impregnated her. Like, at no point does anybody think to pick up the phone and call Bond and be like, by the way, your entire assessment of this situation was completely wrong. Instead, they're like, nah, we're just going to use her as the psychiatrist. We'll keep it secret from Bond, and we'll let him drink his way out of it in Jamaica or something. Okay, so already this makes no sense. It turns out the big baddie is not Blofeld, who would have been really interesting, right? They have him in the movie. Right? Christoph Waltz plays him in the movie again. And they have him in the movie as a sort of weird Hannibal Lecter-like figure, right? They have like a very dramatic scene where he's in a glass cage and he's tied down and they kind of wheel him out. And then he faces down James Bond and all this. And he's in the movie for like 5 minutes, but he's not the big villain. The big villain is a Rami Malek character who has no clear motivation and, as it turns out, is the guy who saved Léa Seydoux's character when she was a teenager, who for some reason both wants to murder everyone on Earth and also has become strangely obsessed with Léa Seydoux for a reason that we have no idea about. Like, so obsessed that he is willing to put in danger his entire plan to kill millions of humans because he wants to kidnap this woman and presumably do something with her that is never made clear, keep her in his thrall, but also take her kid, who is James Bond's kid. And this is the person who James Bond is supposed to be tracking down. It makes no sense. It is completely bizarre. And it is real step down from Blofeld, who actually runs this giant worldwide organization. What is Rami Malek's big plan? I just don't understand. He kidnaps Léa Seydoux. He kind of locks her in a room, and then he's like, well, she's not important to me. This child is important to me. The kid bites him, and then he's like, okay, child, be free. So what did we go through this whole rigmarole for? You could have left, like, if you wanted to kill her or kill the kid, you could have done that 1,000 times. And like, why? So you bring them to this stupid island. You're like, this child is so precious to me. I'll threaten to kill the child. The child is my leverage. And then you're like, oh, the kid bit me? Little shit. Get out of here. Like, what are you doing? Bad parenting strategy. Also bad kidnapping strategy. Also bad villain strategy generally. So then we have the mission, right? The mission is that there is this scientist, and the scientist, of course, has the MacGuffin, and the MacGuffin is this virus that is going to infect and kill millions of people across the world, but is genetically coded, so it's only going to kill certain types of people. And originally, this was created as a British government project designed to kill off members of Spectre or kill off just specific people, but then it was grabbed and perverted by the big baddie. There's a great action sequence in Cuba where Ana de Armas, she's the best thing in the movie. Ana de Armas, not only is she a beautiful woman, obviously, but also she plays the character really funny. She pretends that she doesn't really know what she's doing, but then she really knows what she's doing. Like, again, all of the action sequences are very good. They just don't make any sense in the context of the plot. Okay, and all of this is being contributed to by the fact that MI6 has now replaced Bond with a new 007, who is a black woman whose name I do not recall, because it's completely unimportant who she is in the story. Like, she's just a throwaway joke, and she's utterly incompetent. Now, if you actually wanted to make Bond's replacement as 007 a black woman who is completely competent, and the idea is that James Bond himself is sort of on the downslope of his career, he can't handle it anymore, he's kind of fallen apart, he's dissolute, right? You could totally do that. But instead, she's terrible. She's a terrible agent. Her entire role consists of sucking at everything. She's bad. We'll get to more in just 1 second. First, does it make sense that the same company that controls half of online retail also passively eavesdrops on your private conversations at home? Big tech is more powerful than most countries are at this point, and they profit by exploiting your personal data. It's time to put a layer of protection between your online activity and the tech juggernauts. That's why I use ExpressVPN. Think about how much of your life is on the internet. Sadly, every site you visit, every video you watch, every message you send is tracked, data mined. When you run ExpressVPN on your device, however, the software hides your IP address, something big tech can use to personally identify you. So, ExpressVPN makes your activity harder to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your internet data to keep you safe from hackers and eavesdroppers on your network. What I like most about ExpressVPN is how easy it is to use. You just open up your phone. You click on the app. Right now, not connected. Boom, I hit that. Connected, protected. It's that simple. And ExpressVPN does all of that without slowing your connection. That's why it's rated the #1 VPN service by CNET and Wired. So, stop handing over your personal data to big tech. They'll mine your activity, they'll sell your information, protect yourself with the VPN I trust to keep me safe online. Go check them out right now, expressvpn.com/Ben to get 3 extra months for free. All of this leads to, the big confrontation at the end, which is really kind of parodic and silly, in which Rami Malek has created an iteration of the virus that is only going to affect Léa Seydoux and the daughter, who is James Bond's kid. He infiltrates the island with 007, and finally, you get to the end, and Rami Malek shoots him a couple of times, and then he has a fight with Rami Malek where he beats the hell out of Rami Malek, and in the process, Rami Malek scratches him with this vial, which makes it impossible for him to touch Léa Seydoux and the daughter. If he ever does, then they both die. And then James Bond kind of shoots him to death, and then we get James Bond's death because he's ordered the missiles to be launched at this island where all the bad stuff is, where the MacGuffin is, and it's supposed to be super moving. Now, again, I understand what the writers are trying to do. They're actually softening the blow of him dying because the minute that he can't touch Léa Seydoux or his daughter, and there's no way to fix that, which is made clear 87 times in the movie. Once that happens, and then you figure, okay, well, what's he going to do? Like, is he going to just, touch them with gloves? Is it going to be COVID forever with James Bond and his wife and kid? Like, how's that going to work? So they have to kill him off at that point. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give this one like a 6. Like, it's a fun watch, mainly because, frankly, I'm a big fan of James Bond's new Omega Seamaster 300M, which is quite a nice watch. I really like the titanium bracelet on that sucker. That's a nice watch with the faux tina and everything. Really good. Best things about it, Daniel Craig is always a great and entertaining Bond. Christoph Waltz for 5 minutes is great for like the 5 minutes that he's in it. Ralph Fiennes is fine. No pun intended. The action sequences, particularly the first action sequence, very, very solid. Okay, the worst things about it. I don't know who wrote the script or why the plot is the way that it is. Why? I mean, it's very long. It's like a 2-hour 35, 2-hour 40-minute movie. It sort of wanders here and there and never quite gets anywhere and kills off characters randomly. And then they're all making dumb decisions that don't make any sense. Rami Malek's character, no. Léa Seydoux involvement at the crossroads of every plot point, no. Like everything revolves around Léa Seydoux, right? No one knows why. Like why is Léa Seydoux the go-between for Blofeld? Why is Léa Seydoux the object of obsession for the guy who happens to want to kill half the planet? Why is MI6 right? None of that makes any sense. I have a visceral dislike for people making bad decisions in movies. A good movie has everybody making understandable decisions at the time, but then the consequences are bad because that's usually how people act, right? You make a decision. It's very rarely like completely dumbasical. But everyone in this movie is just making stupid decisions over and over and over again. And then the results are bad. And then we're supposed to be like shocked that the results are super bad. Final pet peeve. I'm the father of a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 1.5-year-old. The kid in this movie is the most obedient, quiet, easy child I've ever seen. And they never explain this. I feel like they were 5 seconds from explaining this because Rami Malek at one point actually points to a plant and he says, "This plant makes you obedient." And I was like, oh, that's why the kid isn't screaming and pissing on him. The kid is, what is the kid in this movie is maybe 4 or 5, probably, right? Okay, so my son's age. Have you ever met a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old? Like, I don't know who the scriptwriters are or if they've ever met a child. There is no child in the world who goes to a creepy Russian dude after being ripped away from his mother. And the kid's like, okay. Of all the suspension of disbelief things, that was the suspension of disbelief thing that got me the most. And I'm perfectly willing to go with a car that has a minigun in the headlights. I'm perfectly willing to go with a virus that kills people based solely on their DNA. But I am not willing to go with a 4-year-old who acts like that. That is not real. Okay, that is not a real thing as a parent. People who are saying this is kind of like an emotional send-off for Bond and all this. If you want to make it an emotional send-off for Bond, then he has to fight the big baddie. And the big baddie can't be Rami Malek brought in to make weird faces and speak with a strange accent for 2 hours with no discernible motive or purpose other than to just be there so James Bond can kill him and die in the process. Especially because Blofeld's a character in the film. You know how close they were to actually making this film like terrific? Blofeld is controlling things from inside the prison. That's a really interesting premise, right? What if the first 20 minutes of the film isn't the first 20 minutes of the film? What if that's all 2 hours of the film, right? Meaning that he doesn't know whether he can trust Léa Seydoux or not. He loves her. He's having a kid with her. And now he faces the conflict of not knowing whether she's working for the baddies or not. Like within 30 seconds of him seeing her again, he knows she's not working for the baddies again. So all that tension is gone. What if the internal tension here is between James Bond as agent and James Bond as man who wants relationship with wife and child? And in the end, he makes the wrong decision because he thinks that they're the bad guys, but it turns out they're not the bad guys. And in the process, he has to take down Blofeld and sacrifice himself. What if that were the story instead of this whole Rami Malek side plot that makes no sense at all? Bottom line, should you watch the movie? Sure, it's fun. It's definitely worth seeing in theaters. It's the first movie that I've seen in theaters with my wife for about 2 years. And for that purpose, it was really fun and kind of a blast. But overall, disappointed with it and wish it could have been more.